Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to Crosswires. It's James here, and this week, although we're not a news show, we are going to be talking a little bit about some of Apple's latest goings-on, in particular in Macs and some of her home stuff, and more specifically, like Apple's trend away from full-blown get all the media into a room and talk about these new things. But let me introduce, of course, my lovely co-host, Jay. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, even if I had to go into work for a meeting on my off day, but at least they paid me overtime.
And free food. Did you at least get the free food?
Yeah, I got free food, chicken tenders and fries, so I'll take that.
Okay, fair play. Yeah, it's frustrating when we do that. But hey, I'm glad you're doing well. We've been having a lot of fun recently. We have been, so behind the scenes, we've been doing a lot more streaming. We're actually going to be streaming later on tonight as we record this. Yeah, it's great fun. So do make sure you check out crosswires.net/live, or if you want to actually go direct, it's twitch.tv/crosswireslive. But without any further ado, let us introduce our guest this week, a returning guest. And do you know what? I love it when we get returning guests. It gives me a little bit of a confidence boost, you know. But would you welcome back from the Mac Observer, Mr. Jeff Butts?
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Good. How are you since the last time?
I'm good. And no, you didn't scare me off. Don't worry about that.
I don't think I've scared a guest off yet.
Good.
Yeah, I think you might have if you had started like texting him in green bubbles, then he'd be like, "What's up?"
Oh, yeah, block.
Yeah, block. Bye. You're gone.
James who?
That's my formula, James Who, also known as Dr. James Who.
Oh.
Hang on, let me just regenerate. I don't want to go.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know his teeth. Anyway, sorry. Big nerd moment. So, Jeff, as a quick recap, for those who maybe haven't listened to your previous episode, of course, we'll link that episode in. Why am I pointing down? No one but us can see this video. We'll put the link to that episode where we chatted a little bit about messaging, the whole thing about the green bubbles. Jeff, tell people a little bit more, a little tiny bit more about yourself, just for a refresher.
Well, I'm managing editor of the Mac Observer, where we don't believe in green bubbles. It's blue or we don't do it. No, it's actually, it's deeper than that. We cover all Apple stuff, which is why whenever Google starts on this rant about RCS, we just kind of scratch our heads and go, why do we need to do that?
Yeah.
But we do cover all things Mac, which I believe may be why I'm here today.
Yeah, I think so. We couldn't get anyone else, so no, absolutely no.
Wow,
I know, right? I just fired
James,
shots.
What are you doing? I've actually followed.
Where's that disconnect button?
Yeah, top left, and I'll.
Jay,
top
don't
right.
help him. All right. So, Jeff,
I could just do Command W to close the window. That'd do the trick.
Or Alt F4 if you're on Windows.
Yes.
Which hopefully none of us are. So, Jeff, thank you. It generally is a pleasure to have you back. And we thought,
thank you.
Because, Mac Observer, it just made sense for us to come and gather and have a little talk. And the reason we're doing this chat is because I think it's exciting times in the world of Apple Silicon. And I wanted to have a little chat, but before we chat about the chips, Jeff, from your perspective as sort of what we can describe as a Mac journalist,
mm-hmm.
what's your take? Because Apple not doing a full bringing the press down and having an event in Apple Park Center. Is it the Steve Jobs Theater? So yeah, the Steve Jobs Theater.
Right.
How do you think that's going down? Because I'll say I like the videos, but at the same time, until people started putting it on Mastodon, or someone mentioned to me, "Oh, Apple have released a bunch of new stuff." I'm like, "What? Hang on, I didn't know about that." And I was actually late to a party.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing, and what we've learned after the fact is that it may be that's not really how it was supposed to go.
Oh,
we've noticed in some of the directory trees and some of the date stamps on the videos that these were actually ready to go as early December or early October, I should say. And so, the rumors that were swirling around that Apple was going to have two fall events, one in September and one in October, it looks like maybe that was the plan, and then it kind of fell apart. And why it fell apart, we can only guess, but I'm sure it has a lot to do with Foxconn in Zhengzhou, China.
Good point, because of course China's been under increasing lockdowns because of the resurgence of COVID over there, and that will have affected. Oh, okay.
And even though the plant that was shut down for so long was the iPhone City plant, it would still have a trickle-down effect on other products.
I can see that, particularly things like maybe, I might be making an assumption here, maybe some of the camera components or things like that.
Yep, camera components, and even just, you got to think that Foxconn was having to shift production to try to keep up with iPhone 14 Pro manufacturing, and so that may have taken away from being able to assemble components at other facilities for the new hardware that was announced last week.
I had not thought of that. That's a really good point, because it does seem an odd time, because again, my take on this would be those were products, but particularly for HomePod, which was also announced, that would have been perfect for holiday season.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think that the decision was probably made fairly early on, because during the last quarterly earnings call for fiscal year 2022, Tim Cook did make the comment that their holiday product lineup was set, which we were able to, we assumed that meant there wouldn't be any new HomePods, no new MacBooks, just the iPhone 14 lineup.
That's a really interesting part that I genuinely had not considered. And obviously not being in that news sphere in terms of, digging through news, it is somewhat of a, I'll be really honest, I'm glad we're not a news show. I love that we're able to shift content around. Like, for example, the episode that came out literally yesterday from our perspective. So this episode will be coming out a week, next Monday. Today's Tuesday. This will come out next Monday. But the episode we put out yesterday literally was only recorded on the Saturday. I had an episode planned to produce and edit. So to edit it, rather, because it was already recorded and put out.
Right.
But because we were able to get the story with Gideon Mayhew, I was able to shift that forward. And it means I can move things about. I can, if we ever have a problem with audio or where I'm not happy with an episode, I can just say to a guest, hey, and I've done it with Ravi Malik's different. Ravi Malik's an actor. Ravi Abbott is the Amiga musician. I've done it with Ravi, because the audio wasn't as good as we wanted. But going back to that, I do like the video production values that Apple are bringing. I love the little transitions. Is it fair to say, and it's a question for both of you, it seems like Apple are really working hard on diversity of presenters.
Yeah, I would say they are. And I think that, I think they've gotten a little bit better at these pre-recorded video segments. I'm not going to lie. I miss seeing Steve Jobs on stage.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really do. And I think that the shift to the recordings is it's kind of a bow to the fact that Tim Cook, Craig Federighi, and others, they cannot pull together the amount of charisma that Steve had on stage.
Yeah. Because, if you look even at how Steve Jobs was able to sell the Mac and was able to get the funding and all that from his garage, he was able to sell. He had so much charisma.
Yep.
I remember the one more thing he told me on the iPhone, which if you look at the early iPhone now, it was a cool device. It was missing a whole bunch of things, but I wanted it because of how he presented it.
But nobody else had those things. So, that was, your best option at the time. And it's continued to be, in my opinion, your best overall option.
Yes.
Other manufacturers may do one or two things a little bit better, but at the end of the day, the iPhone since 2007 has been my go-to and will remain my go-to smartphone.
Absolutely.
The quality wise, I'm still rocking an iPhone 11 Pro Max. And that's still new, but it's not, and it's incredible that it's still been my daily driver. And I feel like that they really worked on the quality. I'm not trying to fangirl over it, but it is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody will accuse me of being a fanboy if they've read some of my editorials or some of my Twitter jabs at Apple. When Apple screws up, I will call them on it.
Yes.
And it's one of the things we talked about the last time you were on is that, look, Apple do make mistakes. We've had that discussion. And it's framed in my mind. You know, when we start talking about some of the hardware, I'll be upfront and say some of the prices, and, you know, and I agree with Marco Arment, Casey Liss, and John Siracusa, the upgrade prices to go from, say, 8 gig of RAM to 16 gig of RAM, $200, that RAM don't cost that much.
It's untenable.
Yeah.
But I'm with you as well, Jeff. I miss with Jobs because for most of those presentations, Jobs led it, but he didn't have to bring different people on. Look, I love Craig Federighi as a presenter, particularly when he's off stage and when he's talking to my favorite podcast episode of every year is when John Gruber gets Craig Federighi and usually Greg
Joswiak? Yeah.
Gets those two sat down and and Craig. My first experience with Craig's presenting style was actually watching one of the developer State of the Unions. And he was fairly new at this point. And he said, look, you know, we've got over 3,000 new APIs. Let's start going through them. We'll start with A. And then he started, and of course he was joking. But that presentation, of course, for hair. But those individuals, as good as they are, don't equate to a Jobs presentation.
No.
Right.
Yeah, so let's dive into the hardware. Now, for new Apple products, we are in the second generation of Apple Silicon for Mac, the M2 line.
Yep.
One thing that's worth mentioning, of course, is that we have an outstanding product that's yet to transition, the Mac Pro.
Right.
We can speculate on that in a little bit, but let's start. So they started with one of possibly over the years, I don't know how to quite describe this, but the unloved at times, and then the infrequently updated machine that was always maybe meant to be someone's starter Mac. You know, the BYOD, bring your BYOD, K, M
or T.
Basically, you just get the Mac box. You get you don't get anything else. The Mac Mini. I remember the original being introduced. I remember the Intel variants. I remember as it started to shrink in size. Mm-hmm. And of course, in 2020, it got Apple Silicon. And it made perfect sense, that machine, to have an Apple Silicon chip, one of the first.
It halfway got Apple Silicon. Because remember, there was still a high-end Mac that was still running the Intel i7.
An i9, I believe, yeah.
I thought it was just the i7, but I could be wrong.
I think there was I might be wrong, but it might have been an option for an i9. But anyway, that's bye.
Right. What Apple has done is, you know, they've now taken the number of their computers that were still on Intel and shrunk that by half. There was the high-end Mac Mini and there was the Mac Pro. Now the high-end Mac Mini has made the leap to the Apple Silicon architecture,
which is in itself a far bigger deal than people might think.
Yes.
Let's start with the big thing here. The base model M2. Mm-hmm. So improved performance. We know the M2 is obviously, by its very nature, is better than the M1. Now, we'll come to something in a moment, but the first thing I want to call out is, and ask you both about, is the price point, because it's $100 cheaper than the base model M1.
I'm wondering if that's because of some of the R&D costs. Like the first one, they needed to recoup that, and now that they've built on that and been able to add it to different things. And it could be the fact that they want to get it into a lot of different places. Like at my last employer, they have, I think now 3 Mac Minis at their place. One's a server, one's server, one's used in the for the webinar stuff, and one's used for their front end machine, and like they're all varying degrees. But the Mac Mini is something you could theoretically put anywhere. I mean, and think of like Mac Mini Colo and like their thousands of Mac Minis, and It's a machine that I think if you lower the price point, you get more quantity of users. I have a Mac, an M1 Mac here, because it's small, it fits, and maybe that's part of why they brought the cost down.
I think that may be a part of it. I think there may also be a factor of, you know, they're moving into a territory where all that's really lacking between the Mac Mini and a MacBook or an iMac is the display.
Yeah.
I'm looking quickly at pricing, and I mean, there is still a pretty significant jump from the M2 Mac Mini to any of the M2 powered MacBooks. But, Apple may have wanted to make that dividing line even greater to, just to get more sales, because they sell the Mac Mini. You take $100 off the Mac Mini, that may be enough to say, oh, you know what? Since I'm saving this on the Mac Mini, let's get a studio display to go with it.
That's a good point.
That's a gorgeous display. I have to admit, my plan is possibly budget allowing. I'm currently on the 27-inch 2017 i7, like really, really kitted out i7 iMac. Let's just say when the M2 Pro Mini was announced, now obviously we're talking M2 Pro, but when these new minis, like, that's going to be my next system. I'm going to save up for a studio display, or I might not, actually. I might get something else, because that's a beauty. You can bring your own display.
Right. And there are plenty of displays out there that are 4K, 5K, 6K that are less expensive than the studio display. They just don't have some of the bells and whistles.
I mean, and for me, let's say I don't need the camera because I've got this Logitech Brio.
And the camera stinks anyways.
Yeah, which is, that was one thing that really frustrated me. I was thinking, on paper, it should have been great.
Yeah.
The specs were brilliant. It should have been able to rival this Brio. And I in my head, I'm thinking, this is a wonderful display for streamers. No, the software has completely ruined that experience. And it's a real shame. But I don't need the microphone either, and I don't need the speakers, because I've got a proper audio interface. I've got headphones.
Right.
So for me, maybe a different display, but that's maybe the beauty of a Mac Mini. But you're right. It could well be the thinking, we could pair these two together.
I had one other thought that might have brought the cost down. Now that a lot of the line has been moved, I wonder if the ability to buy in bulk quantities and produce these chips and produce all of the connectors, that could have been a factor too, versus last year as one of the first parts of the line to get upgraded, so it comes with a higher cost.
If that's the case, that's going to be probably the first time we've ever seen that happen with an Apple product.
But I think, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, what you were sort of mentioning about the fact that all that really eliminates this from, say, a MacBook Air is the fact that MacBook Air's got a screen.
It's got the screen, it's got the built-in keyboard, the built-in trackpad, yeah.
What would be would we win a bet if I were to speculate that there's a good chance that the majority of the logic board is identical between those two machines?
I would not take that bet because I already know it to be true.
Oh, okay. So it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's always been the case with the Mac Mini. The Mac Mini has always borrowed a lot of its components from the portable lineup.
Which makes sense in that form factor. That does make a lot of sense. And, of course, one of the big differences, of course, is it's got an internal power supply, whereas, of course, the laptops don't. So they will just have,
right.
But you won't have, and there's no point having a MagSafe connector on a Mac Mini.
I really wish they would, because the connector that they use now, granted, I'm a unique case because of arthritis, deformed hands, but the polarized connector on the Mac Mini has always been problematic for me. It's very difficult to get it fully inserted and have it stay connected and not pull loose.
Okay, I stand corrected. It's a shame they didn't have the space there. In that case, I will change my... It's a shame they did not have the space to put in the connector that they used in those 24-inch iMacs.
Mm-hmm.
And offload... Because they could still offload the Ethernet onto the power brick in that case. I mean, I don't know how you do that with 10 gig, but...
I don't know that it would even be necessary, but... I mean, it is what it is. There's ways to work around that particular problem, and like I said, I'm a fringe case on that.
But it is something that would be nice. But look, the base Mini, I think is so. Without doing too much of a spec ramble, because look, again, we aren't a new show. This is all being covered.
Right.
What interests me is, it's got the two Thunderbolt 4 ports. Now, we did a little bit of looking before the show, and Jay's Mini, the M1, had USB-C, USB 4 and Thunderbolt 3, they were the same speed, 40 gigabits a second, but I think Thunderbolt 4 has a little... Actually, do you know what? I actually think we've just aligned the specs. I don't know if Thunderbolt 4 actually offers anything more than Thunderbolt 3. Is it just maybe a...
It does offer faster bandwidth than Thunderbolt 3, if memory serves.
I thought we were, and I thought they were both 40 gigabits. So I might be wrong on that. I might, because I know Thunderbolt, because I remember vividly, Thunderbolt 1 was 10 gigabits, Thunderbolt 2, 20, and 3 was 40. And I thought, but it could be faster bandwidth, faster support, more support for video standards in Thunderbolt 4, because actually, this thing can still drive. So the M2 can drive up to 2. I think is it up to 26Ks? It's pretty impressive what it can drive from.
Yeah, and there's an HDMI 2.1 port on the M2,
right,
versus 2.0 on the M1. And I was impressed at the change from the Mac Mini I used at work versus the M1 in that architecture from Intel to Apple Silicon. There is this thing pulls more power than I was expecting. When I upgraded from my MacBook, Intel MacBook, to this, I was thinking, okay, is it going to be that much better? But it can pull a lot of things, like even our streams. James is on an Intel iMac and I'm on an M1 Mac. And what I can pull on this is pretty impressive. I can pull streams and have my video in multiple places at once.
Mm-hmm. You don't have the same limitations. I think partially because that Apple Silicon has much better video encoding support.
Yeah.
You have a much better, and it's why we consider them too. When we look at Jeff, the M1 that Jay's got right now versus this new base model Mini, I guess one question to ask is there a compelling upgrade if you've already got an M1?
Reviews are still trickling in, but based on what we're hearing, no, not necessarily. If your M1 Mac Mini is doing what you need it to do, and you're not, you're not choking it to death, there's not really a big reason to jump. Just like when we talk about the MacBook Pros, I'll say the same thing. There's only a small fraction of people that will see any real benefit going from an M1 Mac Mini to an M2 Mac Mini at the base level.
At the M1 versus M2.
Yeah, not factoring in the Pro or the Max variants.
And that then leads to the next sort of thing. Let's talk about the M2 Pro, because you said earlier, Apple still had, up until these came out, they still had the high-end Intel Mac Minis in their lineup.
Correct.
Because they could still do higher-end workflows. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you've got a Mac Studio. If you don't mind me asking, are you on the Max or the Ultra?
It's the Max.
A lot of people I've spoken to who have studios have said, I wish I'd waited and gotten a Mini Pro, the M2 Pro.
Yeah, I'm kind of there too. I do a little bit wish that my old Mac Mini could have held out another year, but it couldn't. So I got the Mac Studio, and honestly, I'm happy with the Mac Studio. I know that for what I do, even just a halfway tricked out M2 Pro Mac Mini would have been a little bit cheaper than the Mac Studio.
And I think that's so. The M2 Pro starts at $1,300, and it's actually very well spec'd for that price point. Let me just double check, because I think $1,299 for the M2 Pro.
So yeah, $1,300. And that has the specs of my Mac Studio are better than that, other than the fact that I've got the M1 Max as opposed to the M2 Pro.
The nice thing here is, of course, is I think what I really like about the M2 Pro is that, it's got that new 10-core CPU, 16-core GPU. And it does, thankfully, on that M2 Pro, you are not starting at 8 gig. It is a 16 gig machine.
Right.
So I think you actually now you can only go up to 32 gig on an M2 Pro.
Correct.
You can go up to 24 gig on the M2. But I think for me, what's really interesting is just how powerful this thing is going to be for, I think, probably people like myself who do a lot of video editing, do quite a bit of streaming. I don't audio edit on this machine. I think everyone by now knows a number of times I said that I edit on the iPad. But that extra performance above the M2 does make it really compelling for, I'd say content creators, maybe developers who want faster build times above an M2.
Yep.
And I think it's just, I think Apple have got a really nice product there.
It's kind of a shame that they don't have Boot Camp on Silicon, because imagine doing some of the, like, I know streamers who are on Windows who struggle with one PC streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine trying to do that on Windows, but like using Boot Camp. That would actually be kind of interesting.
But the problem you have, and that would be very interesting, but I think part of the reason, and it comes back to why Apple do so well.
Yeah.
There's going to be a huge difference between how macOS performs on ARM64 versus how Windows would perform on ARM64, because Windows ain't optimized for ARM64. Microsoft haven't really got products out there that are ARM. Let me rephrase that. They haven't got really focused products that are ARM64. I think that's probably a fair analogy.
Yeah, because you can get an ARM64 build of Windows, but it's not as optimized as you would want it to be.
And the reason I brought that up was because, like, some of the, especially on Windows or especially on gaming, Mac still lags behind because of developer support.
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, we will be honest, that's the reason we've got Steam Decks.
Right. And it's also why it's so hilarious that Apple, in announcing the M2 Pro Mac Mini, it points out that it's 15 times faster at gaming than the Intel-based system. And we're just scratching our heads going, but okay, so I can play Resident Evil better than I could on iMac. Okay, who cares?
I don't know who I'm more frustrated at, Apple or Valve. I kind of want to be frustrated at both of them. If Apple and Valve got their butts together, no offense, Jeff, got their backsides together into a room.
You think you're funny, huh?
I try.
You got jokes over there?
I do. Hang on, few.
Well, James, I think you're making a butt of yourself.
Seriously, Val, if Apple and Valve got into a room together and said, hey, we're going to bury the hatchet here and we are going to work together to bring that same amazing compatibility layer that the Steam Deck has and, Proton brings to gaming on Linux.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but look, Apple's got enough anti-competition attention against them here and across the pond in your part of the world too. I think that if Apple and Valve sat down in a room together, various government agencies would be wanting to be a fly on the wall and find out what exactly they were colluding.
That's a good point.
Look, Apple has put the framework in place to bring gaming to the Mac. The Metal graphics engine is better than just about anything anywhere, but developers aren't using it. It's not just Valve. It's also Electronic Arts. It's also Activision, it's also Blizzard, Microsoft. I hate to say it, but we're not vocal enough in saying we want games. If we want games, we need to yell louder. We need to say, okay, we're not going to buy your Xbox One just so we can play our games. We're not going to buy your PlayStation just so we can play our games. Give it to me on my Mac, or I just won't even patronize your business.
That's true. And look, Macs, historically they've never been amazing for games, but Apple have tried many times. I remember I do have a vivid memory of Epic being up on stage at an Apple event announcing the original Fortnite for a Mac. And look where we are now.
Right. And, every year we see a new, high quality, high dollar value game being advertised as running on the Mac, but that's the only one that we ever really get. There's no trickle downs to that. We've got Resident Evil Village this year, and that's all we're getting.
Don't we also have No Man's Sky as well?
Has that shipped yet?
Good point. Well, they mentioned it in the announcement.
Then it's coming. Yeah. Okay. So we'll have two
games out of. Look, Jay, just. How big's our Steam library, our shared Steam library?
1,300 games.
1,300 games. And that's just Steam. That's just our Steam library.
And how many will run on a Mac?
Very few.
Yeah.
Very few. And in fact, games that were running on my Mac stopped running my Mac when Apple ditched 32-bit support.
Yep, I too do a little bit of gaming on Steam, and that's a common problem. I'm looking for a game, I think, oh, this looks fun, and then bloop, nope, not going to run on your Mac because you don't have 32-bit support.
Yeah, and maybe Apple, I'm not trying to like derail. I think Apple tried to fix it a little bit with Apple Arcade, and I mean Apple Arcade, I do enjoy, but they're not the same experiences.
No,
in my opinion,
Apple Arcade for me, and I'm. Well, I have a family plan. I love some of the games in Apple Arcade. Frenic by Icon Factory is in Apple Arcade. Great game. Again, just to give Icon Factory a bit more of a plug, since things are a little bit tougher right now. But Apple Arcade feels very much more like a collection of Nintendo Switch style casual games.
Yes.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love my Switch. Mario Kart, Smash, all the Mario games are some of my favourite games, but they are much more casual games than your Resident Evils. Than, we're streaming, Jay's streaming some Nautica tonight. Now, some Nautica does run on my Mac. It's one of the few that does. But I'll tell you something, on this Mac, it ran a lot worse under macOS than it did under Windows when I had Boot Camp on here.
Mm.
And I guess so no one's really going to be buying these for gaming systems. And honestly, right now, my recommendation is if you need a gaming system but it's not a Windows PC because you don't want to run Windows, then Steam Deck, honestly.
Yeah, in my opinion, way cheaper than a lot of Windows machines at that range. Because like my NZXT machine still cost me about $1,000.
To do a little bit of, sort of episode promo, go and check out our chat with Noah from Steam Deck HQ. We talk all about why the Steam Deck is so great. But going back on track, the Mac Minis, they've got a little tiny, when I say tiny, I do mean tiny, a little bit bigger. It made me laugh when the guys at ATP were talking about it. We're talking like millimeter, like less than, I think millimeters difference.
Yeah, 0.01 centimeters.
That might not matter to us, but think about Mac Mini Colo, who built those racks. They now have to probably modify things if they don't fit in those racks.
If it's really different. I saw some references that said, it hasn't really gotten any bigger. Apple's just offering more precision in the measurements.
Oh.
Okay.
That's interesting. And look, that would be my fault as well. Thinking, that you're not going to necessarily redo. No, you're not going to redo the enclosure. Because it's not just because that's the thing. It's not just the new HomePod's technically gotten a little bit bigger as well. I don't know if it's actually bigger. As Jeff said, accuracy.
So specs wise, I guess it's bigger on the inside.
Oh dear.
Go home, Jay. You're drunk.
Look, let's move on to because look. These are not huge upgrades. I think the only thing that really excites me, so the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros got upgrades. They got the option to have the M2 Pro or the M2 Max.
Yep.
What blows my mind about the M2 Max is its maximum memory capacity in a freaking laptop.
96 gigabytes.
Wow.
Yeah. And here still, we're saying, if you have an M1 Pro or an M1 Max based MacBook Pro, even with the 96 gigabytes on the M2 Max Pro MacBook Pro, you might not need it. I watched Marquise Brownlee. I can never remember how to pronounce his name. So if he's listening, my apologies. Email me and we'll straighten it out. He at the end of his review, he said, look, if you already have an M1 powered MacBook Pro, unless you are one of the very, very small percent of people who are already taxing that machine to its limits, this is not an upgrade for you. This is for people that have not made the jump yet.
Yeah.
Can I put that in another piece of context from my standpoint?
Mm-hmm.
Would it be fair to say those who have M1 Pro or M1 Max MacBook Pros, if you've maybe got one of the original first-gen M1s, or particularly if you are on an Intel machine, that is probably going to be a much bigger jump.
Absolutely. But he also pointed out that, if you can find a good deal on a refurbished M1 Pro or M1 Max, that may be the route to take as well, because they're still going to be solid performers. It's a 20 to 30% performance increase. It's not a huge leap, and it's kind of making me. I'm thinking more on can we really expect hardware manufacturers to have huge leaps in innovation year after year after year, or should we expect one or two a decade and then incremental improvements after that? And that's what we're seeing with this year's MacBook Pros. It's an incremental, it's a spec bump. And I think that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why Apple's gone to a lot of service-based, because I'm actually looking at a hardware manufacturer of like handheld machines, and they have literally every like 3 months a new machine. But they said compared to a lot of the places, that machine's where the profit is. And with Apple, if I don't buy a new device, I'm still probably going to use their services. So I'm giving them some income that way.
Yeah, you're still paying for your Apple Music. You're still paying for your Apple TV Plus, iCloud, extra storage, all of the above.
Yeah, we're starting to. Well, no, I was going to say we're starting to run out of space. We're not. It's just I'm slightly offbeat rant. iCloud Drive sucks for collaboration at times.
Sometimes, yeah,
that is true. Yep.
We're trying to find a solution, and sometimes this shouldn't be happening. But when I'm trying to save stuff to our shared iCloud Drive folder for a podcast, like I've been working on stream overlays all this week, the file save mechanism, and it could well be my Mac, but it crashes. It beach balls because there's that layer of iCloud complexity that's just really silly. But that. Yeah, it's probably my machine. I probably need to do something on my machine. Anyway.
Yeah, I would say maybe not your whole machine. Maybe try creating a new account and see if it happens with a new account.
Good shout. It could well be an account. Yeah, it could be.
Sometimes if you get a preference file that's corrupted, there's no way to recover from that a lot of times.
I had that with Apple Mail. Apple Mail kept I literally showed James. I opened up Apple Mail one time, millions of messages that were unsent, and I had to.
Oh, do you know how many times I've tried to explain to somebody how to reset their Spotlight index, and it works half the time, and half the time it doesn't. And same with the Mail index. Sometimes all you can do is just nuke and pave. Create a new account and start fresh.
Yeah, I will try that. Thank you for live troubleshooting on my podcast, but.
Yeah, well,
But these 14 and 16-inch machines are I really love the design. Oh, there is one thing they added which I thought was really nice and cute. They brought over the color matched MagSafe cables. That's nice. That's just.
I want one of. Can I just say one of my wishes? I know that I don't have a need for this, but I want one of those purple MacBooks.
What purple MacBooks?
What purple MacBook?
Wasn't there a purple MacBook or my? Scratch that from the
purple iPhone. Purple iPhone.
Scratch that from the episode. I'm so sorry.
No, leave that in. That stays.
That's staying in. Jay's obsession with purple stays in the show. Absolutely.
I'm so.
If you want purple, Jay, deep purple iPhone 14 Pro.
Oh,
I almost bought.
That's beautiful. That is
now
beautiful.
nobody can see this on the other end because this is audio only. But I am showing Jay my deep purple iPhone 14 Pro.
Jeff, there was a 3 weeks ago, and I hope it's okay to say, James.
And my wallpaper color matched.
Jeff, I love you. I love you. There were about two weeks ago. I woke up and my iPhone was not turning on, and I forgot how to force restart on this device specifically because they changed that over the years.
Yep.
So I'm like, waiting for James to be able to call me, and I'm already looking at prices on a new purple iPhone.
Yeah, and by the way, another thing that the viewers can't see other than the Squadcast, James, when we did the last podcast I was on, was my hair more purple than it is now?
It was, yes, a lot more.
I think so. Yeah, Jay, you're gonna have to go back through my Instagram and see when it first got dyed.
I'm gonna have to install a Meta account because
it was purple. My favorite color is purple.
It'll be in my squad shop.
Okay, cool.
But moving slightly away from the purple, those color match.
Why? Okay, so the color coded power cables for the MacBooks, cute, kind of funny considering there's really only 2 color variations for them, but I want those color matched woven power cables sold individually. I'm tired of these rubberized, plastic wrapped power cables that Apple wants to sell us off the shelf. I want and I've said this before, I want the braided woven power cables.
Yes, please.
Like you get with the Magic Trackpad, the Magic Keyboard. Now you get them with the iPad Pro.
Let's start seeing those on the shelves. Yeah, I want to go and pick those up I would love I have a braided USB-C cable, a black one for my iPad, but that's by Anker. That's not by Apple.
Yeah, mine are by Anker or by Native Union, some third party. Apple's missing the boat here. OtterBox makes a really good one.
Oh, same with, I hate promoting them, but Amazon Basics, really cheap and inexpensive, and I swear by their cables.
Yeah.
Because you'll remember, of course, Jeff, a time when every Apple cable was white and every Apple adapter was white.
And until they started weathering and all that, and then all of a sudden, that one day where they cracked.
And yet still the default is white. The wall wart that came with my new iPad Pro, white. Even though I've got the space gray iPad, I've got a white USB-C cable and a white wall wart.
However, one place where the cables aren't white by default is the new HomePod.
The new HomePod.
Oh.
Now we're not talking HomePod Mini here, folks. We are talking full fat, full size HomePod. It's back.
The rebirth of the OG HomePod.
This thing looks incredible. Like I can't wait to go to the Apple store and listen to it, like what it sounds like, because I remember the original HomePod, the big one, sounds great. My minis sound great, but there's something about the bigger size.
Well, okay. Now, I was warned. If you're happy with your HomePod Mini, don't listen to an OG HomePod.
Okay.
You won't be happy with it anymore.
I've heard the same.
That makes sense.
So unless your budget can afford replacing those HomePod Minis with HomePods, don't test those waters just yet.
Then I'm not going to Apple Store, so James, stop me from going to the Apple Store.
You're going nowhere near an Apple Store, especially on our budget. No. But Crosswire's budget does not extend to you getting it. Look, we will at some point get one, because I think for me, the biggest thing that they did right with this reviving the OG HomePod was fixing what was missing. And that was simple. The thread radio.
Yes.
Not having, or matter, whatever we want to call it now.
Yeah, but I've got that in my HomePod Mini.
So can I say that the HomePod does matter?
I'll allow it. I've made that pun several times on Mac Observer. Why matter matters.
Or does HomeKit matter? I think that might. It does now. Yeah.
Yes, it does now. Well, and one of the nicest things. Okay, I love the immersive audio. I love the spatial audio that the HomePod is offering. I love the room sensing technology. But we're talking about Matter. We're talking about HomeKit. And can I just say, I love being able to call out, "Hey, S-Lady, what's the temperature in my bedroom?" With my HomePod Mini that I've owned for over a year, and I couldn't do it until this week.
Yeah, this is huge.
Yeah, and like, because now, like, think about the fact that, like, you can now use HomeKit. I was reading up on it, because I did not realize till today that my minis could do that, and now it's cool. Like, you can say like you have a dehumidifier hooked up to HomeKit. You can then say, "Hey, I'm getting a little too humid in here. Let's bring it down," or "It's getting a little too cold.
Right.
Turn on the heat." I mean, there's a lot of cool cost savings things, because my parents have a alarm.com system, and it could do a lot of those with a temperature sensor and can work with their thermostat. And it's cool we have that now here.
Yeah, because you can set up Siri automations to do all of that for you. I just mentioned being able to ask what the conditions are, simply because it's an argument that my partner and I have almost daily, whether it's hot or not in our room. And now I can just say, "Hey, S-Lady, what's the temperature in here?" And, that solves that problem right there. And well, no, it doesn't, because she calls it a liar, but
Can I just say what's cool about the fact that it already works on HomePod Minis? It shows because I know Apple get sometimes accused of like planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
But they unveiled something on an older device. They didn't have to unveil those radios. They could have just kept it.
No, they didn't. They could have kept them turned off, and in fact, it was. I could argue that it is a little bit more work to turn them on than to just leave them off.
This is true. Now, this has a huge. We talk about HomeKit automation. I've just realised so I already had a temperature sensor in my flat, and ironically, it's not in any like temperature thing. I don't have a smart thermostat, it's a rented property, but my Philips Hue motion sensor had a temperature sensor. So now I can now see, and I've just literally, my HomePod mini's updated. I can go in it will show me the temperature and show me the humidity. It will show me the humidity in my lounge. It won't in the hallway because that doesn't have that. But that means that if you've got things like, so let's say you've got a really wonderful heating system where you've got a smart thermostat, and then if you've got central heating, gas-fired central heating, or even just what are the ones? Oh, those wonderful electric panel heatings.
Baseboard heaters, anything that you can put. Honestly, anything you can connect to a smart plug of some sort.
Yes, I'm thinking. I need to remember the name of them. They are HomeKit compatible. I forgot them. My friend has them, but because we're room by room, that means that look, we're in an energy cost crisis. It means that you can say, okay,
right.
Well, right now I'm in my lounge. I don't need the hallway heating right now, but I would like a bit more heat in my lounge.
Yeah, if you have a climate control system that supports different zones, these automations can totally do that. And if you don't, then that's where you get the smart plugs come in. You get a 4-pack of smart plugs, plug a fan into each one, put one in each room, and boom.
And also dehumidifiers. If your humidity gets too much, you can say, turn on the dehumidifier and turn it off again when it reaches the given humidity.
Right, because you don't want it to get too low, and that's a common issue is people will run their dehumidifiers and then forget about them, and then dry the room out, and that presents its own host of problems.
It does, unless you are doing like I'm doing. I have a dehumidifier. The reason I have one is because it dries my laundry. I put everything in my bathroom, put the dehumidifier in my bathroom, and it dries my laundry a heck of a lot quicker than just rack drying, and a lot cheaper. I don't own a tumble dryer, but if I did,
yeah, I'm actually going to be going that same route because
interesting.
The dryers in my complex suck.
They are pretty bad. I've heard stories. Anyway,
okay.
There's something else at Apple now. It's not available yet, but this is a really interesting one, and it's definitely interesting when we come to think about, again, rental properties where you're typically not allowed to change smoke or carbon monoxide detectors.
Yeah, so I was rooting around on the Apple HomePod websites, both the second gen and the mini. In one of the under one of the sections it mentioned Smart Hub, and I look at the little anecdote. Sound recognition will be available in a software update later this spring. Sound recognition may detect smoke and carbon monoxide alarms and send you notifications when recognized. Now, they did say should not be used for like critical emergency things, but that's pretty cool because
Amazon Smart Assistant
does have. Sorry, I just realized I just probably activated it. Can you bleep that out?
I can edit that out. However, I'll take this opportunity to say, can you just say that word again?
Amazon Smart Assistant.
Buy Crosswires a brand new Mac Mini M2 Pro.
Yeah.
What? I've got to take the opportunity, folks. I'm sorry.
You got to include your wish list link in there somehow, though.
There is a crosswires.com/tips if you want to give us a tip for. Anyway, let's go back to the episode. They have the Amazon Madam A,
Lady in the Tube,
Lady in the Tube guard. And that is a pretty cool feature where like you don't have to have a security system.
Yeah.
But you can at least have a little bit of peace of mind. I have a security system here. I'm not saying what it is because it's between me and it's not HomeKit, and I only have it because I want something just because of where I live. But that's a pretty cool little device, and it's going to be on both the mini and the $399.
the second gen, yeah, but $299.
And yeah, that's a cool little feature, again, that they didn't have to give to all.
Can I ask a question on this one from someone who is hearing impaired? Now, I have hearing aids, but I can't usually wear them when I'm...
Huh?
You what now? What's that?
What?
So with sound recognition, could this also recognize door intercom sounds? Can it be programmed?
That would be cool.
We're gonna have to wait and see what it includes. If they're baking in the same sound recognition feature that's already in iOS, then yes, it should be able to. And you can even set up custom alarm sounds. Like you can set up on the iPhone, you can set one up that, you record your microwave going off 5 times, and then it will listen for your particular microwave and alert you when that sound goes off.
If they had this, that changes a bunch of things for home automation. And it's one reason why from now on, I wasn't talking with James about tech stuff when I bought some stuff for my flat, but from now on, I only buy HomeKit enabled stuff because of that integration in the shortcuts.
Yeah.
Because one thing that I think Apple has, I'm not trying to, again, fangirl, but compared to the
Amazon Smart Assistant.
compared to
There we go again.
yeah, the A-Lady.
A-Lady.
Compared to the A-Lady, they have a lot of integration with different apps, and it's already on your device. It's just there. And what I love is it's on your device. But yeah, I found that a really cool addition that they're adding to the HomeKit. And again, I think Jeff, you mentioned earlier, just like the temperature stuff. The aim is to have it in all rooms of your house, so then you don't have to think about it. So if you forget that, if you don't realize that like your smoke alarm's going off, now you know.
Yeah, if your home alarm system doesn't alert you, and you're away from home, and your smoke alarm or your carbon monoxide alarm goes off, then you could get that notification some other way.
I like Apple's approach right now on like the crash detection, the satellite stuff, on adding features and like fall detection on the watch that will potentially save your life. And it's a feature that you hope that you never need. Like I will enable this, but yeah, it's there. You'll be glad you had it.
Yeah, I hope I never need crash detection, but it's enabled by default, and I'm not going to turn it off.
My mom has an Apple Watch, and one day it notified her that she was having some heart problems. She went to the doctor, and the doctor found out something. So that's already something. It saved my mom's life in a way.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to Apple's ecosystem. For all the things that people say about locked in or sheeple, I think the huge advantage of Apple having such an ecosystem and controlling the hardware and the software means that we do get these features.
Yeah.
One of my favorite features on the HomePod and HomePod Mini is if I'm playing a track on my phone, maybe through my headphones or something, just bringing my phone close to the HomePod to transfer the music across, or transfer whatever I'm listening across.
Yep.
AirPlay works so well most of the time.
It does.
Me and Jay, for example, one thing I love that we added, I think in 16, it was in 16, being able to move FaceTime calls across devices.
Yeah.
That's so cool, because sometimes I won't be on my computer or my iPad. James will call me, or I'll call James, and we'll be like, okay, we're on my phone, transferring over here. And I mean, it's not perfect, but it's the first generation of this technology, and as time gets on, it's like handoff is much better than it used to be.
Yeah, universal control.
Gosh, yeah.
And I discovered purely by accident with my new iPad Pro that universal control works both ways. I have a non-Apple branded keyboard trackpad folio for my iPad Pro, and I was playing around on the new iPad and moved the mouse cursor up to the top of the screen to activate Control Center, and the mouse disappeared. And I'm like, where'd you go? And I look at my Mac display, and oh, there it is.
Is that by any chance the Logitech one you have?
No, mine is by ESR Gear.
Oh, okay. So that's cool. Yeah. So that's great. If you've got your iPad on your desk, yeah, I really like how they do stuff. Now, before we wrap up, there's one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about, and maybe it's not something that I haven't set this up yet. I know, Jay, you've turned it on, but as well as part of 16.3, I believe, advanced data protection has launched, and actually launched more worldwide than we thought it. I think than we thought it was going to do straight away.
I think it went completely global, and we didn't think that it would.
What's been pretty cool about that is because I'm on a family plan with James, I had to wait till 16.3 to be able to activate it.
Uh-huh.
But what's cool is I activated it, put in my passcodes, said who my recovery contacts are. I didn't have to do the recovery contacts or the recovery key. I had to have at least one, if I understand right, or Apple was. But once I enabled that, I don't even realize it. I have iCloud.com turned off because I have devices access it. But it's pretty cool that now, without even realizing it, my data is just that much more secure.
Yeah, Apple's got work to do on that, though. My new iPad Pro, because I had advanced data protection turned on during the beta, I had problems setting up my new iPad Pro. I had to turn off advanced data protection, sign into because it told me that because advanced data protection was turned on, I needed to update my iPad before I could sign into my Apple ID. And then I just got a blurred out wallpaper and never got the option to update to iPad OS. And so I had to turn off advanced data protection, update everything, and then turn it back on. And people are going to run into this with any device that isn't running 16.3 on the iOS, iPadOS, HomePod software side of things, or Ventura 13.2. Yeah, if you have it turned on, be ready to turn it off if you get a new device that doesn't include the latest operating system out of the box.
That's particularly relevant if you are, obviously Apple's inventory will start to get, Apple's new products will start to get 16.3 on device, but it's going to take time for the inventory that's shipped with 16 dot something to clear.
Right. Well, now see, I would think that the new HomePods will have 16.3. I can't say that for certain until they start arriving, but you know, the MacBooks that began arriving Tuesday, the MacBook Pros and Mac Minis that began arriving on Tuesday may or may not have Ventura 13.2. You know, it's tough because that release candidate just came out the Thursday or Friday prior.
But that's a good point.
Hard to say.
Because on the Mac side, when you get a new out-of-box Mac, doesn't it do an auto update to the latest version?
It's been a while since I've set up new. I don't know that it. Yes, it does. You can have it automatically update. If it doesn't, now the other thing with on the Mac side is that you don't have to sign into your Apple ID right away. You know, I'm dealing with an iPad where you have to sign into your Apple ID or you don't get any updates. You know, there's no save. You know, wait and do this later option. On the HomePod, there's no wait and do this later. It's got to be the right version or you're out of luck.
So this is a problem that in that transition period that one day we won't remember this, but it is a good thing to know.
Yeah. I mean, eventually, you know, the in-stock versions of, and the devices I think that are going to be most affected are going to be, well, all of your mobile devices, your iPhones, your Apple Watch, your iPads, then your Apple TV 4K, your HomePods.
And that's something, of course, to mention is, you know, remember your Apple Watch needs updating as well, folks. That has to have access. Your Apple TV does. Yeah. By the way, can I just say, it's really nice now that Apple have all of the quote-unquote home entertainment hardware. Hang on. Am I wrong on this? The HomePods all have Thread radios. Does the base model new Apple TV have Thread? I seem to think it doesn't.
The one without the Ethernet does not. But the previous generation Apple TV 4K does.
That's interesting. Oh, worth mentioning, by the way, just offhand, the new Mac hardware that came out has been upgraded to Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3. Very unlikely that most people are going to have 6E Wi-Fi gear. In fact, probably unlikely most people will have Wi-Fi 6 gear. in their homes, especially if you've got
Right, but it's starting to come out now. I think what will be more impressive to a lot of people will be the full HDMI 2.1 support.
Yeah.
That's so. Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. Now it gets a little bit more complicated when you start looking at multiple displays, but
Yep.
up to 8K resolution. Now, interestingly, I noted they didn't say what refresh rate for 8K.
No, they did. 8K is
Unless I missed it.
I believe it's 60 hertz.
That makes sense.
It might be 30, but I want to say it's 60. 4K is up to 240 hertz,
which is really impressive. The highest resolution screen in my home currently is this 5K iMac. My other monitor is just a 1080p 60. My TV is 4K 60, I think. They're all good displays, but I'd love a high refresh rate display one day. But it's great to see. Now, when you talk these I think the M2 Max can drive is it 4 external displays at differing resolutions? It's kind of
the MacBook Pro. I'm not 100% sure on that. I can't remember the specs. I know the Mac Mini. No, they still are limited to 2.
I think one of the Mac Minis can do three.
Yeah, but the M2 Pro can do 3. The M2 Pro can do
M2 Pro, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that makes sense, by the way, on the M2, because the straight M series chips, as in M1, M2, can do maximum of 2 displays. One of those on my laptops, of course, is the internal screen.
Right.
So that makes sense. So advanced data protection, I mean, you've obviously turned this on and had to turn it off again. I'm going to be enabling this. Is there anyone who shouldn't enable this if you're a frequent iCloud.com user?
Maybe. I don't know that even that really matters. I mean, what this is encrypting is additional parts of your iCloud data stream that weren't encrypted before. And a lot of it didn't really matter for me because I wasn't letting that information go to iCloud in the first place. One of the key ones for me was backups of my messages.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would not use iCloud for that because it was not end-to-end encrypted. I used another way to back that up.
I think one use case I would definitely suggest, because again, I have a recovery key backed up, and I also have 2 recovery contacts, James being one of them. I know I just gave somebody my social engineering ways. If you want my data, you got to go through James.
Well, all right.
James for James. Yeah. Jeff's plotting already.
But one thing that Apple did say, and I even had a window or two said, I want to make sure, do you know your recovery key? Do you know your contacts? Because if you run into issues, we can't help you. And
right.
I think that's the biggest thing is if you know what you're doing and you have people set up to help you, enable it.
You just have to remember that, you have to remember that you're taking the life of your data into your own hands.
Yes.
And that's what end-to-end encryption means. It means that your service provider does not have the way to recover your data. That is a good thing in most cases. But if you don't look after your keys, if you're the sort of person who uses password 123 for every password,
shoot! How'd you guess?
I figured it was just root.
No, it's admin.
Admin.
It's the password in Hacker. I am God.
Do you know? I'm so glad that I know that this is not the case for Jay. I know that she's using strong passwords to protect her accounts.
Yes.
I hope so.
Oh no, we are using what we use 1Password family. Look, I am a huge advocate for 1Password. Can I say one thing though? I set up. Speaking of data security and Apple's ecosystem, a friend of mine recently, so he retired from his job at a college here in the UK, and he wanted to get himself a new computer because his previous computer had been a work issued Windows laptop, and he wanted to upgrade his phone from an iPhone 7. Good time to upgrade. His 7 was still mostly working, but it's becoming slower, and I'm like, the 7 isn't. Probably after this year going to receive security updates. Let's get you. So he got an iPhone 11, refurbed through GiftGaff as it happens. And he bought a refurbed, we talked earlier about the M1 still being good machines. He bought an M1 MacBook Air from Apple's refurb store. That's still a great, for day-to-day computing, that's still a great machine.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that really blew me away was how good iCloud Keychain has become in the last couple of years.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Someone was telling me, I didn't know about this. Did you know that if you are on a Windows system and you've got the iCloud app installed, it will pull your iCloud Keychain stuff into Microsoft Edge?
Really?
That's cool.
Huh.
So that starts to make look, is 1Password or other password managers, except LastPass, of course. No one touch LastPass. Just don't.
Yeah, let's leave that one alone.
But tools like 1Password are so much better for when you need to share passwords.
Yeah.
And collaborate.
Yeah.
But iCloud Keychain is really good.
And it's installed. It's free. I honestly, unless you are a power user, because we're a power user and we share, I would honestly, for a lot of people, say iCloud Keychain. And if you know what you're doing, advanced data encryption, just to give it a little extra security.
Yep.
But I would definitely recommend like iCloud Keychain. I mean, I have mine still turned on for a few things. All my passwords are stored 1Password, but I just have iCloud Keychain turned on anyway. Well, it is required, if I understand right, for advanced data protection, just as a layer.
But also don't forget, iCloud Keychain does more than your passwords. Obviously it handles Apple's current implementation of passkeys, but it also, and people maybe forget about this, it also saves all the Wi-Fi credentials so that when you come to a new iPhone and you've signed into iCloud, you go and join your home network, boom, it's already got the password.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, before we wrap up, because I'm aware that we've taken up, I always enjoy chat. I know our episodes always run a little bit longer. It's great. And I love the discussion we've had. Is there anything, Jeff, if we say, we started 2023, would you say Apple are doing pretty well at the moment? Are Apple putting out good products as it stands right now?
Yeah, I think so. We're not seeing groundbreaking innovation yet, although I think we may very shortly, but that's a topic for another day. But they are, they're continuing to evolve their product lineup. They're continuing to move towards migrating all of their computers to silicone. And, we just have to keep watching and, when it comes time to upgrade, look and see what your best option is.
I would just have to say one thing, using an M1 Mac. I love how a lot of my apps from iOS and iPad work on my Mac. And I think that's a pretty cool, quote, one of the code names for it, synergies of the two operating systems.
Yeah, I love that because, I was listening to a podcast. I think, in fact, it was Sofa, an app that me and Jay use. And they were advertised. And of course, what they were talking about is it's available for iPhone, iPad, and Apple Silicon Macs because there's no extra work there.
Right.
I mean, in the last generation, the M1 generation, but one thing I want to just put out there for discussion and speculation is where on earth is my Mac Pro, my Apple Silicon Mac Pro? Because previous generation, we had, so we had M1 Pro, M1 Max, M1 Ultra.
Yeah.
And effectively, each one was just another one of the previous one added in, right?
All right. So let's bear in mind that during 2022, a lot of the world was on fire a lot of the time. We had multiple increases, multiple ramp-ups of COVID-19 infections. We had plants getting shut down, plants getting severely curtailed, plants seeing rioting. And so Apple is working on a Mac Pro. They have been working on an M2 Ultra or an M2 Extreme chip for the Mac Pro, but because of manufacturing concerns, because of R&D impacts, a lot probably related to COVID-19, and just a lot of other things, that's been slowed down. I do think we will still see a Mac Pro in 2023. Apple said that they hoped to complete the transition to Apple Silicon in about 2 years, and we're still on the fringe of that about 2 years time frame.
And I think that's a really good point because I remember the PowerPC to Intel transition. They said about 2 years. The same. I mean, that was a much faster transition, but this time, I think you're right. It is that supply chain issues, and we've obviously seen but I can see this year, potentially, I might be wrong on this, I can see the 24-inch iMac getting an M2.
That'd be nice.
Question for you, Bill. Could you see an M2 Pro iMac?
An M2 Pro iMac or an M2 iMac Pro?
M2 Pro iMac. So the same 24-inch chassis with the M2 Pro.
Maybe.
Because the only thing I'm thinking of is that larger iMac, like what I've got on my desk, is gone from a lineup.
Yeah, I don't know. Apple has been very, very quiet on the iMac front. Even the display supply chain watchers are confused. We thought that a new 27-inch iMac was coming in 2022 based on the display panel orders. And look at what we got instead, the Studio display. Apple has proven that they can still pull one over on us, and we just can't tell what they're going to do when it comes to displays now that they've introduced the idea of including all of the computing components of an iPhone into a monitor.
Yeah.
Here's a idea, speculation. Continuity camera with the MagSafe adapter. What if we saw an iMac without FaceTime installed?
Yeah. But then they would almost need to include a MagSafe mount, or the outcry would be horrendous.
You've also then got the problem, Jay, and I love that idea, but you've then got the problem that not everyone who buys an iMac is going to have an iPhone that can be paired with it.
True.
Compatible.
Yeah.
And plus, they could sell Face ID on a Mac as a feature. So there is that idea.
Yeah, and I mean, let's face it. I think that the cost of including the FaceTime camera in that chassis is negligible.
Yeah,
and to remove it kind of goes away from that. If we look back to the original iMac for 98? I should know this. 98, 99, but G3.
Sounds about right.
That original iMac, the whole messaging on the iMac is to take it out of a box and you're ready to go. And that,
yes.
You remember the Mac versus PC ads? You had, the rest of me's in some other boxes over there.
Yeah.
I think that flies again. I see what you're saying, Jay, but continuity camera is a wonderful feature. And actually, there is part of me that wants to try continuity camera instead of this Brio and for a stream and see how we get on. I have a mount somewhere. Again, you take away that out of a box, and particularly maybe for the education market.
Yeah,
that is true. And I remember what made me fall in love with the Mac was I got one of those giant iMacs in 2006, and when I got that for the first time, took it out of the box, it had a keyboard and mouse, and I was actually on the living room floor using it until I tried to update the software and ended up bricking it.
Well, I have that same sort of experience. So when I got my first iMac, my mum genuinely came into my room and said, "I said, oh, this is my new iMac. She knew I was getting. She said, where's the rest of it? What do you mean, where's the rest of it, Mum?"
Yeah.
She's like,
it's all here.
This is it. She says, no. Why can't, and her phrasing was, why can't Microsoft do that?
Yeah.
Oh, God, I bet I had to. Well, that's stupid. What is it, the Surface? Let's not go over the Surface Studio. Oh.
Yeah, I've got a brother-in-law. I love you, brother-in-law, who swears by his Microsoft Studio.
Yeah, I would just swear at it, not swear by it.
Is that B or S?
B.
I thought it might be B. Okay. Yeah.
I love you. By the way,
the reason she's saying that is because I know that Jay's nephew listens to the show, and he will probably end up telling that particular.
Yes.
Anyway.
Hey, Dad, guess what Aunt Jay said?
Yes. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I love digging the episode that you were on before, and it was so cool now to talk with you.
Yeah.
I'm a geek. Apple's products I could talk about forever, and I know we could go on for hours and hours, but thank you so much for taking your time. For those, sorry, James, I just stole the show. I just realized.
No, it's our show. Go for it.
So, Jeff, for those who want to hear more, and I definitely recommend following Jeff, where can they find you across the interwebs?
Well, are we still talking about that
No,
bird site?
we are not.
No, yep, no, not giving them any more credence.
Okay, then you can find me at macobserver.com. I am a regular guest on the Mac Observer's Daily Observations podcast. And on Mastodon, I am Jeff Butts at newsy.social.
I want to highly recommend the Mac Observer daily podcast because there are many times that something will happen and I'm like, I want to hear what they have to say. So you are one of the podcasts that I will routinely add to my queue.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's been a long-standing part of the Mac Observer. I was really excited when we got Ken Ray to come on board and host it. And, you know, it's the start and end of my week and sometimes the middle of my week.
You know, and it goes back to why when I was relaunching Crosswires from what it used to be, which was a somewhat news-centric show, I thought, no, there's too many good Apple news shows already. Mac Observer's Daily Observations being one of those shows. And, you know, I listen and I get stuff. And Jeff, it's such an honor to have people coming back onto the show. You know, from my perspective, thank you for coming back. You know, as you said, I didn't scare you off.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
This is always fun. This is always fun.
That's what I like to hear. Thank you so much. So, Jay, hit that button and we will do the outro.
Hitting it now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Crosswires. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So please drop us a note over to podcast@crosswires.net.
You can also drop us a comment on the post, or if you're a GoodPod user, why not start a discussion there too?
You can also join our new Discord server at crosswires.net/Discord. We've got forum channels for each episode, and we'd love you to join the discussion there. You can also follow us on Mastodon at crosswires at masthead.social. And of course, you can find the show in all the good podcast apps, and all the really bad ones too.
If you'd like to check out more of our content, head on over to crosswires.net/YouTube for all our videos, and keep an eye on our Twitch channel at crosswires.net/live for our upcoming streams.
If you like what you heard, please do drop a review in your podcast directory of choice. It really does help spread the word about the show.
And of course, if you can spare even the smallest amount of financial support, we'd be incredibly grateful. And you can support us at ko-fi.com/crosswires. That is ko-fi.com/crosswires.
Until next time, thanks for listening.